Alan Wake is a third-person psychological action thriller released on the Xbox 360 in 2010, then on PC in 2012. While most people probably remember it as that shooter with the flashlight, I remembered it as a shooter with a great story. After playing through the game again, I can confirm that while both perspectives are correct, they're only a page of the whole story. The story follows a man named Alan Wake who, well, I'll just let him tell you.
My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
He's a writer. Specifically a writer who hasn't been able to write for over 2 years. Alan and his wife Alice go on vacation to a town called Bright Falls with the hope of escaping the pressure of his washed-up career. Things take a turn for the worse when Alice seems to be taken into the lake by an unseen captor. Upon diving in after her, Alan blacks out, waking up in a crashed car 7 days later with no memory of the events in between. While walking to safety, Alan finds pages from a manuscript credited to him that seem to detail the events unfolding around him. Alan is then attacked by people covered in darkness, clearly being possessed by an evil force. Over the following days, Alan tries to find Alice as the deeper story unfolds around him. Let's put a pin in the story for now and move on to gameplay. Alan Wake plays like a third-person horror shooter with a few unique mechanics.
A flashlight just descended from heaven.
In combat, enemies can't be damaged until their darkness is burned off with light, hence the flashlight being used in combat. In addition to the flashlight and guns, Alan uses flares, flashbang grenades, and a flare gun, which is easily the best weapon in the game.
Ready for this? God, I love it.
The shooting is serviceable, though it can lack precision that you more often than not won't even need. The inclusion of a dodge that slows down time and the constant need to monitor your flashlight battery make for engaging cinematic combat.
Let me tell you, Duracell missed a prime opportunity to cross-promote with this game. Wait. Oh my god. Those were Energizer batteries.
Outside of combat, I found myself searching high and low not only for marked supplies, but also TVs that played a Twilight Zone parody called Night Springs.
But the price for such a legacy is steep indeed. In Night Springs.
Night Springs.
Tonight's episode.
As well as the manuscript pages sprinkled throughout the levels, which offered some cool behind-the-scenes story context.
Suddenly, Barry froze in mid-dial. A window broke somewhere in the building, and then the lights went out.
No, Barry.
The message was from Barry. He was getting worried at the station. He wanted us to hurry.
Character development.
Rose knew that Rusty was in love with her, and she liked him too. She liked him a lot. But Rusty wasn't the prince of her dreams.
And sometimes a cleverly disguised tutorial.
I squeezed the flashlight like my life depended on it, willing it to stop coming any closer. Suddenly something gave, and the light seemed to shine brighter.
These manuscripts also often tease what's to come, cleverly increasing the suspense and tension as you wait for something like a chainsaw-wielding monster that Alan reads about in one of the many collectible pages.
That's when I heard the chainsaw.
I love this page. Just, that's when I heard the chainsaw. And that's the chainsaw.
Even though I spent a lot of time searching for secrets,
Over here, Wake! The chopper's in the other direction!
One moment. I'm looking for paper.
I didn't mind because the level design features a lot of cool details like Easter eggs or scannable QR codes that make exploring interesting. And the graphics still hold up pretty well today, especially during the daytime segments. The cutscenes didn't age so well, however, with the character models looking dated with awkward mouth movement and rushed dialogue.
I'm a writer, goddammit.
I found myself really enjoying the characters though, except for when I wasn't.
Nice. You suck.
There were a few characters like Agent Nightingale and the Kidnapper that just felt like an exaggeration, written like catchphrase spouting villains with no character depth.
This is Agent Nightingale, FBI! Get him up, Hemingway! You're under arrest!
But the positives still outweigh the negatives. Along with a town full of charming minor characters, some of the highlights included Barry, Alan's agent and best friend, who was just as funny as I remembered.
Did you call 911?
No. Oh my god.
Yes, that one saw the light.
Oh my god.
You didn't like that one? A tough audience.
Pat Main, the host of the local evening radio show that you could listen to throughout levels, acting as a warm reprieve from the feeling of facing the dark alone.
It's Rose.
Well, hello, Rose. What's on your mind?
I know who that famous artist was. It was Alan Wake, wasn't it?
Rose,
I
Pat, you traitorous douche.
And Odin and Tor, two crazy old guys that claim to have been in a metal band back in the 70s, which actually turns out to be true. Look up Old Gods of Asgard, listen to all 4 of their songs, and thank me later.
They literally recorded a song. Do you think they won awards for this song?
As you'd expect, though, Alan is the focus. We meet him as a creator struggling to create, seeming numb to the world around him. But the more strange things unfold around him, he almost seems to come more alive, driven by purpose once again and fueled to create, almost like he's in his element. Remedy loves to use internal monologues with their main characters, and honestly, it was a stroke of genius to have that through the voice of an author. With every line of narration, I can almost hear the clicking of Alan's typewriter as he adds it to the story.
The writer is a light that reveals the world of his story from darkness, shapes it from nothingness. The way a sculptor carves a statue from a block of granite. If I stop, the world I'm making dies. Darkness will reclaim it.
And this truly is his story, through both his role as protagonist and as author. And it's a really interesting line to see walked by such a relatable, flawed character. Now back to the story. Spoilers ahead. Alan finds out that within Bright Falls dwells an evil presence that manipulates the artistic minds of whoever dwells there. Because of the supernatural happenings, fiction can become reality. This dark entity kidnaps Alice and holds Alan captive until he writes a manuscript that results in bringing the darkness into power. You with me so far? No? Cool, let's keep going. Alan realizes that whatever he writes will come true, so in hopes of saving Alice, he decides to write himself into the story, as well as a means of escape from captivity, through the efforts of an old foe of the darkness named Thomas Zane. Through this escape, Alan wakes up in the car 7 days later with no memory of his captivity, and various pieces of the manuscript he wrote within that lost week spread across the town in convenient places in time. But we already talked about that, so try to keep up. Over the next few days, Alan would encounter a man who claimed to have kidnapped Alice, a doctor who tries to convince him that Alice is dead and he's had a psychotic break, and the worst federal agent I've ever seen, Nightingale. All of these are villains who want the manuscript for their own reason. Well, except for Agent Nightingale. He was just an incompetent jerk.
Wait a minute. I know.
Oh no.
Alan eventually regains his memories and sets out to confront the darkness and write an ending to the story that's unfolding within the town. The overall story feels very Stephen King, but the game definitely wears that inspiration on its face.
Get back in the cell, Stephen King!
Now think about this for a second. Alan wrote it. The game we're playing, the manuscript pages that show us things he wasn't present for, encounters we would come to face, and the people we would interact with. Alan wrote all of it. It's safe to assume that Alan wrote the behavior of the characters as well, including the villains. So what if the kidnapper and Nightingale were completely different people before Alan wrote them as villains to be used in his story? This could explain their corny dialogue. Maybe Alan is bad at writing villains.
You can see them too?
Hell, of course I see him. Come on, we gotta move.
Why?
Because that's the way the story goes.
Yeah, but...
Another example is the old woman who leaves hidden messages leading to supplies. Was she always this way, or did Alan write a guardian angel into the story and used an elderly woman carrying a lantern he saw the day before as an inspiration for the role he would place her in? What about Thomas Zane? Is everything just a story made up by him? Is Alan even real? Is anything real? Am I real? Even though these questions are never explicitly answered, this is an example of the layers of genius this game pulls off. In a world where a writer can bend reality to his will, we question what is reality and what is fiction made reality. Alan Wake is certainly something special. If you play through it just expecting a good story with some fun gameplay, you'll get that, but if you pay attention and look deeper, you'll see the layers that the game truly offers, and what I would absolutely consider a love letter to the horror suspense genre. But does it hold up today? With how much we all seem to love self-aware meta pop culture these days, it's almost like Alan Wake's clever execution of its story is more fitting now than ever.
He took out his hip flask when he reached the page that described how he reached the page that made him take out his hip flask. It wasn't a booze that made him.
As for why I didn't remember much of this in the preview, well, I think it comes down to how I experienced this game similar to how I would a short-lived TV show, which makes sense because the game was designed to feel just like a TV miniseries. With time, the specifics become hazy, but there's something special about the whole experience that leaves a lasting impression, tempting you to come back and rewatch it all over again. So if you have a decent PC or an Xbox One or 360, I encourage you to play Alan Wake. If you're like me and are left wanting more after this game, Remedy has released Quantum Break on Xbox One and PC, and Control on the same systems with the addition of PS4.
Tell the other toilets what you see here.
Both of which seem to continue Alan's story in subtle ways. Remedy has big plans, even now almost 10 years later, and I can't wait to see what's in store.